Oh, good. I'm glad you made it.
Uh, the Zoom was very excited about all sorts of things.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, I guess we were just lucky. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. I was about to just pull my phone out. How are you, David?
Well, I'm quite good.
Nice.
I actually I'm very good. Um, I will just alert you that it's a not probably going to happen, but I might have to answer my phone.
Oh, okay.
Um, I don't know. You remember we canceled our trip back in January to the West Coast,
Yes.
and we went to book it yesterday for May, and one of our credits had been stolen and used,
Great.
and
Yeah.
nobody knows how it happened. And I'm we will get the credit because it was clear we hadn't used it,
That's good. Yeah.
but I have to go through talking to United Security in order to
Oh, wow. That I've had it stolen. I've lost count.
really.
Yeah. Uh, uh, and then but it was really only like the first time. Like someone went to like New York, I think,
Uh
and
huh.
bought like thousands of dollars of like bags and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, so that yeah, they they were like, like we're gonna, So yeah, the guy called. It was simple stuff. They were like, I don't even remember. It was very simple. So if that
Yeah.
helps at all, but
Well,
and they were very nice. You know.
yeah. Well, the person I was talking to yesterday was very nice, and she assured me not to worry about not getting the credit. I mean, it's enough money to be serious about.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
anyway, just in case, I don't think it's likely to happen on a Saturday, but
Yeah. You never know.
no, you don't. So how are things over there in your land?
Uh, I don't know, David. In the grand scheme of things, everything's fine. In the day to day nuances of moving through everything, could be better.
Do you lie?
No, no, no. It's just I always laugh because I'll be like, oh, I know David's gonna ask, and if you had if anyone else asked at any point during the 2 weeks, I'd be like, oh, miserable. But then when you ask, I'm just like, well, you know, like relative. I don't know. Just for some reason you put things into perspective of like, well, maybe a lot of it was my own fault. Maybe maybe I just was a little too attached to some ideas about something and got in my own way.
uh-huh.
Work
Well,
has been stressful and,
been
and
there,
busy.
done that, Andrew.
So
Well, I'm glad you're here.
yes,
Uh,
thank you. I'm glad to be here.
and maybe one day we can meet with masks or something.
Yeah, yeah, it's starting to warm up. It's actually a star today, so we're doing our excuse me, our egg hunt after this. So
Oh, good.
now I'm glad it's a nicer day for that. So,
I'll
but yeah,
bet,
yeah, I'll
I'll
talk
bet,
to.
I'll bet the kids are excited about that.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. Questions?
Um, not really. Not really. I did not get a lot of practice in. Is what I would say.
Uh-huh.
So I don't have a lot of things that I've developed to have questions on.
Well, what you got in was good. We'll take whatever you can do. Okay, well, actually, this is kind of an important class.
Okay.
We're going to, we may not get to the form today with this one.
Okay.
So I'm going to kind of go through what the important gates and cavities are in the body.
Okay. This is recording. Cool.
And then I'm going to lead you through an outer dissolving practice focusing on the gates.
Okay.
Principally. So that's kind of where we're going. So just learning to do this basic procedure can take you a year or more.
Oh, okay.
And it depends on how much time you want to put into it. But Bruce trained in China for 11 years, and he did it full time, 12 to 14 hours a day. That was his work, and it was pretty much 7 days a week. He did take some time off here and there, but in general, that's all he did for 11 years. Well, some people go to a weekend or they do a week workshop, whereas Bruce did it week after week, 52 weeks a year for 11 years. So there's really quite a bit of difference when you're really in when you're in there and committed. Very good, David. So I'm just trying to give you an idea of what the internal phases of this work are. The last place that we got to in looking at the energy gates was to get the tongue touching the roof of the mouth. And it's as though there's a slice going right through your head. And it's everything that's in that slice that you're working on. And it's not this one and that one. It's not linear. It's whatever you've got going on and what you're dissolving. It's like a diver goes down into the ocean. And every depth that he goes to, there's something there. Whether that's a blocked point or it's a blocked energy gate, that's how this process works. So the next thing you look at is that after your tongue touches the roof of your mouth, it is very important that you focus on the occiput. And the occiput is where the spine joins to the brain. Inside the brain, about a half an inch deep, is where you actually get energetically. The gate that controls the interface between the brain and the spinal cord. It's a very, very important point. There are other things where you reach out, but that's the whole object of brain Qigong, which we are not going to discuss further at this point, since I think I've mentioned there are 40 points in the brain.
Just a couple. Got it.
Got it. So let's go where the next gates are. Most people don't have jaw problems, but there is something in this world called TMJ, temporomandibular joint problems, and the whole joint basically gets completely destroyed. So you want to locate the two gates of the jaw, the hinge points of the jaw. And there is a gate that's inside each of them. So if you take the edge of your nostrils and went straight down, and you go into your mouth, right into the soft palate on the bottom, there are two gates right there. And those 2 points are the 2 points of the jaw, and very specifically for jaw problems. But also do try to understand that very often, if people have jaw problems, it reflects in the neck, or it reflects in plates of the skull, or if you don't have TMJ, you may not need it. But if you do, you may want to know about working with those points. Or if you have any sort of neck pain or any sort of teeth problems or severe headaches, these are really good points to work on. The next thing is that as you go down the spine, the two most important vertebrae that effectively are gates are the big vertebra at the base of the neck. You know, when you run your finger down your spine, you can feel one sticks out. The Chinese call it the big vertebra. We call it C7, cervical 7. And that is one is extremely important because of the sideways in which your energy goes from your neck and your brain out and into your arms and crosses that area. The energy flowing through C7 becomes, if it becomes distorted, it usually tends to to distort the entire spine in whatever way it may. So now to finish this, I would ask you to, we'll do that later, blah, 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 blah. There are several ways that dissolving can be done. The first way is that you understand how dissolving works and you go through it on your own and you try and figure it out. Well, we've talked about these and they are written down. The second way in which it is done historically is that a master will do something that is called transmission. And they are the energy, they share the energy, their energy with you in an extremely direct fashion so that they get these points activated inside of you. So you have the ability to become sensitive enough that you have the maximum opportunity to become sensitive to these points. So when you're able to feel that, you can go back and practice on your own and you really know what you're going for. Not as an idea, but as a lot closer, but it's a lot closer even if it hasn't completely surfaced in your body yet. The input is there. It's like a seed that's been planted. Just water it and it'll come up. So that's the difference between learning from an ordinary instructor like me or someone who can show you everything there is and be very clear about it, and learning from a master. I'll just tell you that I did one workshop with Bruce where he did do transmission with us. It was a meditation workshop, and I could feel him doing that with about 60 people, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So I know it sounds kind of strange, But I can testify that it is possible. Now, when energy goes out from the body, it branches off. And I just want to show you some things so that you understand. You have two major conduits for how energy ends up moving from your spine into your arms. One conduit comes out from your that's not right. Comes out from in a point along the spine in the back of your heart, right in the middle of the back, directly opposite the heart. Then it goes through a linking channel from there into your armpits, and then from your armpit, it of course connects to your hands. That's one. The second one is also especially true of energy coming down. When it reaches C7, which I just mentioned, it branches off and comes down to your fingertips. Both of these are important, and that's a useful thing to know, because sometimes it may be that it is more the one from the back of your heart that's causing your problems, and maybe at other times it's the one at C7. How do you know? Eventually you practice and you feel and you start noticing from doing one what's happening and from doing the other one what's happening there. You finally figure it out. One of those things you can only learn from practice. Finding a problem at C7, I would simply have a person focus on dissolving that and dissolving C7 long enough until they could actually feel how the energy was spreading out to their arms. So, same thing, ice to water, water to gas. Usually when you hit C7, you're going to spend some time there because it's incredibly important. Just as you're going to spend time on C1 because it's incredibly important. It is where the energy of your brain connects to your spine and is an incredibly important one, and it's important on and off switch. So that too may need a lot of time. As we go down a little further and we hit the throat, everyone thinks they know what the throat is. And in the sense of everybody has heard about chakras, everybody's seen pictures of them and they think they know what it is. And it's kind of funny because usually a lot of what they think about chakras is really sheer nonsense. It's inaccurate. It's distorted information. It's not totally false. It's just a lot of distortion. Because when the chakras are really being talked about in yoga or Ayurveda, in medicine, they talk about the way the chakras operate on the physical level. Most of the stuff that people are gathering about chakras is about how they operate on a psychic level, where these are doorways into aspects of your consciousness. But let's just forget about chakras and talk about the Taoist point of view. The throat is a big deal in Taoism, except that they don't have chakras. They have dantians, and sometimes they call ancillary what is attached to a dantian. But it doesn't get a chakra name because it's not primary. They only go for 3 dantians. The belly, the one we're used to, the lower dantian, the heart, and the brain, in effect. And the brain, the upper dantian, is composed, as I said, of 40 brain centers, so it's not actually a single chakra. So if you now go to the throat, there are a couple of points. First of all, obviously, whatever the throat chakra is, whatever that energy center is, it has to do with your voice, and it has to do with all emotional communications. But from a very physical point of view, it's rather important because it actually is what governs the thyroid gland, which is incredibly important in terms of human health and functioning. Where is it? It's not necessarily where you think it is. For example, in yoga or as a chakra, as a general proposition, the throat chakra are thought of as being a little on the sides of your throat, not in the center. Basically, not in the middle of your throat as they are in Taoism. So if you go right above the bone here, the breastbone, and you go in actually about an inch, and then you go right down behind the breastbone, again about an inch and a half, that's where the actual center is located, that throat gate. It's really not where you would intuitively think it is. You just have to find it because it's what is called a cavity in the body. It's not just a point. It is a gate, but it's also a cavity. You have a difference between gates and cavities, and between points and cavities. So what is a cavity? A cavity is a larger area of tissue inside your body, and inside of it is the energy that shoots out everywhere. It's not like everything comes into it and goes out of it. It's a big, giant connector, but occupies a fairly large area of tissue. So where do you have other cavities? You have one in your throat. You have one right here underneath the diaphragm, and it's actually way in the back. You have one in your midriff on each side. You have one at your quad. You have one in your armpit. And you have one behind your knees, in the soft area behind the knees. And these are fairly large areas that are actually extremely important. But at the very center of a cavity is the gate. And the gate is what controls the action of the cavity. But the cavity itself is actually a much bigger mass whose purpose is actually to have everything come in and go out of it in order to move things to a larger area of the body. So the throat is rather important. When you get to the throat, you're probably going to want to spend some time resolving that. Now, if we look at some other gates, you could do this after the heart or before the heart. But the actual gate that you're looking for is not the physical heart itself. It is the area that in yoga is called the heart center. And that means it's on the central channel. The throat gate isn't on the central channel. It's slightly in front of it. The central channel is in the middle of your body, but the throat but the throat cavity has a lot of functions, so we'll just leave it at that. The next important gate we want to look at is at the shoulders. You have in the shoulder 4 secondary gates and 1 primary gate. And the primary gate is in the middle of all the 4. The middle, that primary gate, is in the center of your armpit. So it's up in to the middle of the armpit. The other gates, the first one is the acromioclavicular joint. You know, when you go up here, there's a little notch in the top of your shoulder. That's the acromioclavicular joint, and that's the first gate. And you can feel that. The second one is the shoulder's nest, which you should be familiar with at this point. The third one is in the exact center of the scapula, your shoulder blade, but it's in front of it, between the scapula and the ribs. But it's right in the middle of it. It's not on the outside. And so it's perhaps very obvious that we're talking about playing around with gates like this and dissolving them, dissolving there. But what we're really talking about is your consciousness going inside your body. Finding the center gate and the shoulder's nest gate are fairly easy, but the one on your shoulder blade is really tricky because that one is actually behind what you're used to feeling. The next one is your armpit, and it is inside your armpit, but only a little bit. So that's a little confusing. So you actually have one gate, secondary gate, just a little ways into the armpit, and then you have the primary gate, which is deeply into the middle of the armpit.
Okay.
And shoulders are an area that often need to be done quite a bit. Now, in Chinese medicine and in Qigong, something that's important, there is an idea that the body has 3 burners. The upper burner, which is basically from your diaphragm up to the top of your head and out to your hands, and the lower burner, which is from your lower dantian down to your feet, and the middle burner, which is obviously in between and integrates the top and the bottom. For practical purposes, the way they think in Qigong is that everything from the diaphragm up to your fingertips and your head is one piece. You can't think of it as a bunch of different pieces. It is one piece that has different parts. And the trick is to get them to interconnect smoothly. There are now 2 ways you can proceed. And it doesn't much matter which, because eventually the way the dissolving is going to go is that if you reach this more toward the end, the ultimate goal is to actually be able to dissolve everything, your whole body, simultaneously. And the thing is that nobody can do that from the beginning, so you have to go through this piece by piece practice. With that being said, you have 2 ways you can go. You can come down the body in layers and dissolve anything you find that's at any one height, or what is very useful and probably the best way for a lot of people to start, especially those who have neck and shoulder problems, especially neck problems, is you do your shoulders first. And then what you do is you go down one arm to your fingers, and then you come back up and do the other arm. And then you come back up, and now you're going to go down through the entire chest and back. But looking at what we have in the, now in the arms, in the elbows, there are secondary gates and there are primary gates. The primary gate is located in the very center of your joint. Where you have secondary gates in your arm is that if you turn it so that it's palm, your arm is palm up, there are actually two little tendons you can feel there. And there are two gates inside and two outside these tendons. So you have them inside, and then when you turn to face the other way, there are two little indications on the outside here, where you also have two more gates. These are all secondary gates. And I did send you that chart that you can look at further on this. And the primary gate is in the center. You can put these together in different ways, but I wanted to point out everything that is in there. And we have the same thing when we get to the rest. There are no gates in the forearm, except there really may be blockages there, so you have to check. In the wrist, there are two gates on the outside and on the inside, and one slightly above on each side. And you must release these secondary gates before you can go for the one in the very middle of the center of the wrist. It is a mistake to release the gate in the center of a joint and then go for the secondary ones. First, you have to release the secondary ones before you do the primary. Then when you go to the hand, there are a lot of little bones in the hand, the metacarpals, and the space between each of the bones has a gate. And besides the space in between the bones, there is the center of the palm, where we commonly see the picture of an eye, frequently in Buddhist pictures particularly. The Laogong point is the primary, probably the single biggest energetic point, usually the biggest of the energy centers everywhere in the world because it's so powerful. The point is directly connects with all three dantians, just as the bubbling well on the bottom of the foot actually connects to the three dantians. Then we talk about the center of each of the joints of the finger. So each joint of the finger has a gate. Don't want you to get bored here. The very end of the finger is the most important. It's got to go right to the very tip, not the pad, but the very tip. And when you have that, that's what will finally make your chi flesh out to your fingers. That's the arms. So now let's think about one more thing, the chest. When the first places you actually contact when you're going down the chest is where the sternum connects at the top. Then you go down, and we talked about that throat center there. And then you go down to each of the places that your ribs connect along the sternum. And each of those have a gate, and you have to open that space all the way from the sternum to the spine and back. And that's very important. Most people in many traditions neglect that. You have to dissolve that whole space all the way back to your spine, because these spaces, especially around the heart, are the strongest single activators of every collateral channel in your body. You have vertical channels and you have horizontal ones. And if you do it with the spaces in between the ribs and you dissolve those, you can get a stronger activator of your collateral channels. Later on, if you can dissolve the physical tissue of your heart and your lungs, but that's after you can do all of the regular gates. And eventually, if you do really, really well, then a later time, after you really get these gates, you go down from the top through your third eye and to the center of the heart. That you don't need. So there is a very important gate for women right at the nipple. And it's not really important for most men. Yes, 6% of men do get breast cancer, but it's not really strictly about breast cancer. It's because this particular gate governs and is directly tied to the entire operating function of all a woman's glands, so it's kind of important for them. For men, it is that if they stimulate their prostate, that has a direct effect on all their glands. It is just parallel structure in the male. What we're going to do now for a few minutes is I'll talk you through, and you're just going to do dissolving from the crown of your head to your fingers and down to the bottom of your chest and a little bit further, because these are the gates that we want to work on. Then we'll do the gates of the middle burner and the lower burner, and then we'll at least have understood something about dissolving the gates of the body. So this is kind of a long dissolving section we're going to do. Obviously, you can't always do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. Often your practice in dissolving may simply be to go to the first place that you recognize a blockage and hopefully work on dissolving it and whatever else there is at that level, and then just sinking your energy to your feet. And that may be all you can do. I mean, I wanted to say that because I know your schedule does not allow you to do a half-hour dissolving every day. Probably.
Not most days.
Not most days, anyway. However, really learning to do this dissolving process is extremely important eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if you find you can just do a few minutes here and there,
Yeah.
it is better than not doing it at all. And Just because Bruce did it 10 or 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, doesn't mean that you should or ought to. I didn't,
Yeah.
believe me, although I've spent a lot of time dissolving. So, what I'm going to suggest is that you stand to begin, but maybe have a chair close so you can sit down if you need to or want to, and let me see who this call is from. I don't know, so I'm going to answer it.
That's fine. Yeah.
Hello? Hello? No, they just wanted money.
Great.
So good to have a chair there because there is a point at which you could sit down, or if you get tired, you can sit down. So,
Okay. There's a bench there. If I disappear, I've gone to sit.
okay.
I'll be right there.
So make sure your feet are on the floor and connected downward, ideally to the earth. Make sure the crown of your head, your perineum, and the soles of your feet have a sense of all coming together so your body becomes stable. And get your breathing from your belly and your diaphragm and any other level of the Taoist breathing that you can do to be smooth and even and as relaxed as possible. And as you inhale, simply become more aware of any tension in your body. Any discomfort anywhere. And when you exhale, simply let that discomfort go. Until your mind arrives down at somewhat of a very stable level. And you are who you are. And just keep doing this for a couple of breaths until you actually are who you are and are not thinking about what has happened or what's going to happen. Just being in the moment as much as possible. You're creating a relationship between your body and your mind. And that's the only relationship you want to be involved with at this moment. Not what could be or what was. What is happening at this moment. So start at the crown of your head. Ice to water. Water to gas. Just endeavoring to recognize any place that's blocked, which might be hinted at by a feeling of tension or strength or something that doesn't feel quite right, especially if you don't know what it is, or any type of contraction. Dissolve everything around the entire crown of your head, from back and sides. You don't have to go very deep inside your head. Just stay on the surface. That's just fine for this moment. And now begin to go on down your head until you arrive at the area of your third eye, the space between your eyebrows. And dissolve inward there about an inch. Ice to water, water to gas. Just let everything go. Your forehead, the sides of your head, and the back of your head. Until you reach your temples. And there again, ice to water, water to gas. And then back to your third eye. Ice to water, water to gas. Keep in mind that the ideal scenario is that you practice sinking your chi for a long time and could go from ice to water reasonably rapidly. Because dissolving is really about water to gas, where sinking your chi is really about ice to water. And moving down to the level of your occiput. First your eyes, releasing everything in your eyeballs. and the space behind your eyeballs or your optic nerve connects into your brain. Ice to water, water to gas. And then down to your inner ear, ice to water, water to gas. And then down to where your tongue touches the roof of your mouth. Completing the connection between your governing and conception vessels. Making the bridge between them strong. Ice to water, water to gas. And then down the first few vertebrae from your occiput to the middle of your neck. Water to gas. And if you need to, dissolve your jaw. Both the hinges of your jaw and the 2 points on your soft palate. And then continuing down the rest of your cervical vertebra, one at a time, if you can, until you reach C7, the large vertebra at the base of your neck. And then going to the secondary gates of the shoulders. The AC joint, ice to water, water to gas. And the shoulders nest. water to gas. And the point in the center of the shoulder blade, between it and the ribs, ice to water, water to gas. You can sit at any time if you feel you need to. Just keep your spine straight. And then the gate in the armpit. And that's the secondary gates of the shoulder. And now go into the very center of your armpit, to the primary gate. That and the 4 secondary gates dissolve and bring their energy into the central gate deep inside your armpit and dissolve that center of your armpit. Ice to water. Water to gas. You continue down the arm. The front of your elbow, the secondary gates of the elbow. And the sides of your elbow. All of these secondary gates dissolve through your elbow into the center of your elbow joint. Ice to water. And water to gas. Now dissolve everything in your forearm down to your wrist. And then focus on the secondary points of the wrist. 4 on the back of the wrist, the ones above and below the fold of the wrist. The sides and the front. All of these secondary gates dissolving into the center of your wrist joint. Ice to water. Water to gas. And then to the hands. Between the metacarpals, the small bones of the hand. In between each one there is a tiny gate. The center of your palm, Lao Gong. And in between the joints of each of your fingers, ice to water, water to gas. The very tips of your fingers. Water to gas. And going back to the top of the spine and dissolving down the vertebra of the spine. Obviously everything that's in your back, but focusing on the gates between each vertebra. Knowing you may only be able to do 2 or 3 vertebrae at a time. Being aware of where your ribs connect into your sternum and your spine. The spaces in between the ribs. Dissolve those all the way between the sternum and the spine. All the way to your chest. Your heart. The center of your physical heart. And the center of each of your lungs. And even if you can, the center of each of the 8 lobes of the lung. And from that point, just feel it sink all the way down to the bottom of your feet. And then go back to the crown of your head and sink your energy down to your diaphragm. Go underneath your diaphragm and in a few inches, and back into the cavity. And in that cavity is a gate. This is often called the lower middle dantian. Its salient quality is this is the place in the body that energetically is responsible for the ability to overcome obstacles. Sometimes in China, this was called the businessman special, because business people have to overcome a lot of obstacles. But equally in the world of Taoist meditation, this is also simply considered to be important so that people could overcome the obstacles of the world which could prevent them from meditating. And there are many internal organs in your body. And eventually, the ones that have gates that are very important to dissolve are your liver, your spleen, and both your kidneys. And there are others, including your digestive valves and your bladder. These are the ones that you want to start with. And now dissolve again down from C7, down your spine, to directly behind your lower dantian. And as your chi sinks down, dissolve your lower dantian. so that now all of the qi of your upper body is flowing into your lower dantian. Ice to water, water to gas. Now, between your lower dantian and the vertebra directly behind it, there is a gate and cavity that's called Mingmen, which gets that name because it's directly connected to your kidneys. And there is an energetic channel that circles the body here, and it is what connects the front and the back of your body, sometimes called the belt channel. You want to open and dissolve this energetic channel because it is part of the key to opening up the microcosmic orbit. And this channel connects your dantian to your spine, which is part of the reason why there's such an emphasis on the lower dantian, not only in China, but in all of Oriental Asia. You begin to get the sense of that connection from Mingmen, which translates as the door of life, because the kidneys, in the thought of Chinese medicine, are responsible for the essential life force that circulates throughout your internal organs. This specific place in your spinal cord is directly attached to your kidneys. So feel that you have this channel between the lower dantian and Mingmen established and open and flowing. And continue dissolving down the vertebra of your spine through your sacrum to the tip of your tailbone, so that your entire spine and your lower dantian are connected. The yin of the lower dantian to the yang of your spine. And along your left and right channels, in the middle of your mind. In your midriff is an important gate and cavity. In order for the energy of their lower dantian to move to Mingmen smoothly, These gates also need to be opened. Ice to water, water to gas. Begin to move further down and dissolve the energy gate inside the prostate. Dissolve the hip socket. Ice to water, water to gas. And just inside the anus, about an inch, is the gate that is very important for releasing the large intestine, not only in terms of the final point of defecation, but the entire large intestine and your perineum. Ice to water, water to gas. And then the center of the qua, not on the surface, but almost midway inside your body. And your perineum. Water to gas. And in the middle of the front of your thigh, about halfway down, there is another gate, which releases the knee. Ice to water, water to gas. Continue down to the knee, the front of the knee, the 4 points of the eyes of the knee. Sides, just into the knee a little bit. The 4 secondary gates above and below the fold of the knee, where the tendon is. And all of these points dissolving into the exact center of your knee, which is the primary gate. Ice to water, water to gas. And continuing down to your feet, on both sides of your Achilles tendon, at the bottom, deep into the foot, where there is kind of a hole or a deep depression. Ice to water, water to gas. And there's a secondary gate in the malleolus bones, which are on both sides of your foot, about an inch into the bone. And on the front of the foot, 4 points in the crease of the tendons and underneath the tendons, where normally when you stand, the area becomes very soft. Ice to water, water to gas. And release the small gates between the spaces, between the small bones of your feet, the metatarsals. And the spaces in the center of the joints between your toes. Ice to water, water to gas. And then the tips of the toes, not the pads, but the very tips. Ice to water, water to gas. And along the center line of the foot on the bottom, where if you were to bisect your foot in half, the bubbling well point in front of the ball of your foot, and the point just before you reach the back of the heel, Shimian. And the point in the exact center of that line, which corresponds to these points in the central channel. Ice to water, water to gas. And now let all the energy from the top of your head and your fingertips go right down to the bottom of your feet. And continue down from the bottom of your feet, penetrating to the ground, into the ground. Ice to water, water to gas. Moving down below the ground until you come to a natural stop. And dissolving that place where your energy stops. The boundary of your etheric body, which is something that grows and shrinks moment by moment during the day. Your physical body is fixed, but your etheric body is not. Dissolving down from the bottom of your foot, and staying there until you find out if you can feel the energy of the earth at all. And when you do stabilize below your feet for no less than a month, and maybe many months, till the energy of the earth is clear, and you understand how it is that it enters your body, at that point, you go to the top of your head and you feel above your head to the boundary of your etheric body above it. And you dissolve that point until it becomes stable. And this too may take many days or many months. But when it becomes stable, you'll know, because you will be able to feel that energy. To feel what enters your energetic field from beyond that point. If you doubt if you're doing it, you're probably not. Because when this becomes clearly occurring, it will be crystal clear to you. There is no ambiguity to it. Before that point, there's only ambiguity regarding it. But for now, dissolve from that point down through your etheric body until you reach the crown of your head. From here, you'll dissolve everything down your body to the bottom of your feet and to the end of your etheric body. And when you get to the bottom of your feet, you could continue simply to dissolve and let that energy keep on releasing continuously, all the way from above your head to below your feet, focusing on whatever places come up that will allow it to be stronger. And that concludes the basic practice. So pause and relax. Let your eyes gently open. And indeed have a drink. A good idea. So, did you feel anything in doing that?
Yeah, all sorts of stuff. I guess right at the end, you know, yeah, I felt like I had, like, everything got out and was kind of like a base. Um, and you're like, oh, so, in a few months you can go to the top and do this part. And I was like, okay, I won't do it. and then you're like, but for now, just do it. And I was like, okay, fine. Yeah, it was like a huge wash of right at the end of
Good.
some, a
Yep.
different quality.
Yep.
Just flushed right through. It was cool.
Good.
Yeah.
That's what we were looking for. Good. Well, this is, as I said before, I recognize you can't do this all the time, but if you have a time when you can,
Yeah.
you can either listen to the recording or you can just do it on your own. It's
Yeah.
either way.
No, yeah, the recording will be super helpful, I think, because I tend to, I don't know, I get like caught up in, oh, it's not one where to go next, or like, oh, I shouldn't go back, or so just having the instructions going.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it helps, yeah, when you're beginning. Yeah.
yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That was a lot, I know, but I hope it's helpful.
Yeah, I think so. I have some questions, but I gotta get going.
Okay.
But and they're general, just like, oh, I noticed, I don't know, just general, my typical 100 clarifications.
That's fine. You can send some to me or
Sure.
write them down if you
Yeah.
want to wait, whatever.
No, I'll probably email them or something.
Good. Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good couple of weeks.
Yeah, and good luck with your card and everything. Your credit, whatever.
it'll get straightened out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So hang in there. It's going to get warmer, and then maybe we can get all you guys over here to visit.
Yeah. I'll talk to Kaya and see how she'd feel about something like that. Excuse me. Sorry.
Could be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jade and I would love to see all of you.
Yeah. No, it would be nice to get out. And Lyra's got to get more time in the car. She gets car sick.
Oh,
Like I think what happened is she got car sick like once or twice, and
uh-huh.
now it's like, of course, just I think it's more in her head,
Yeah.
you know.
Yep.
So a little more trips and more practice would be good. So
Well, we'll be glad to offer that to her.
awesome.